Moment. Yes, I think we are live now. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. Today, me, Artem Kliga, the Advocacy Manager of the Movement of Conscientious Objectors, and today I like to present our guests from the Colombia. Today we have a webinar devoted to the topic of conscientious objectors in Colombia, and today I, with my guests, Mariei Paula Zuleta, psychologist and graphic designer with 8 years of experience, with an experience also in conscientious objection work. And I would like to welcome Alejandro Parra Machias, conscientious objector, and they are both present their organization from Colombia that is devoted to the peace building and to the topic of conscientious objectors. Maria, Alejandro, thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. I'd like to welcome you today.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yes. So, okay. I'm going to start talking about the organization a little bit.
Yes, please.
Our organization is based in Colombia. We work mainly in Bogota. That is the main city, the capital in Colombia. What the work we do is specifically centered in youngsters, but we also accompany the processes of adults as well. We accompany the process of conscientious objection in Colombia because Colombia's context has very specific issues in terms of this. Because of the obligatory military service, of the mandatory military service. And in Colombia, there are not very many alternatives to the military service. Right now,
sorry.
We are, it's okay. Right now, we are in the process of making those alternatives. We'll talk about it later, but is a very hard situation. So what we do mainly is accompany the processes of conscientious objectors to be able to make this right a real thing, because it is considered a human right in Colombia, but many people don't know about it. So it's very hard for youngsters to access this right. So what we do is we accompany them in the process of doing like making this process effective for them, especially because this process is handled by the military. This process is usually youngsters go into the military areas and they have to present a declaration of their conscientious objection. And we help them in the process, and we also make something that we called simulacros, that are like a simulated situation of how they're going to be in that specific process, because there's also an auditing process inside the military buildings where they have to present their declarations for persons that are a psychologist, a lawyer, a military representative, and a doctor. So when they present these, they're usually in a lot of tension, and they usually have like a very hard process to go through in this auditing situation. So what we do is help them in terms of this, like how are you presenting yourself, how are you presenting your declaration, to understand very well what are those reasons for them to object to the military service, and why do they want to like go in this process. That's mainly what we do. But we also have another way of addressing like the military perspective, and is building peace processes through workshops and through gamification. We go to schools and we do workshops on conscientious objection and also in peace building and prevention of gender-based violence. So when we go to schools, we try to make this process as fun and as friendly as possible. So because of that, we have for more than 8 years developed gamification and like gamified perspective in terms of what we're teaching these kids, or what the thing is that our perspective is about like teaching youngsters in a not only in a gamified perspective, but also in a way that is like the construction of knowledge is joint, is not only we are going to teach them something, but we are building knowledge together. So we also have developed several games and board games specifically to learn about these these different kinds of problems. We prevent gender-based violence by addressing these issues in a gamified way. One of our games is called Macho and is specifically to address gender-based violence and all the dares that the masculinity has. We'll show you some images of these games, but I also wanted to give the word to Alejo to talk a little bit about this. So maybe, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Alejandro, please, can you add something to this introduction?
Yes, it's just the collective action of consensus objectors. That's the name of our organization, has working for almost 20 years. And this is a huge process of resistance and try to develop some alternative to militarism and militarization in Colombia, because Colombia is a country with a huge problem of militarization. We have the second biggest army in the region, in South America, after Brazil. And we have the third higher military budget in the region, because we have the support, economical support, through different kinds of technical and international support, mainly from US, because we have some agreements, military agreements with the United States, and by this kind of agreements, we receive tons of money to mainly for this subject about the war on drugs, but we know that it's more like try to assure the interests of United States in South American territory through this kind of support of our country, because our country has a geostrategical location in the continent. So for that reason, United States send a lot of military support to grant this kind of presence in the region, in this country. So this alternative to the mandatory military service and this process that Maria Paula describes, it's recently, because consensus objection as a fundamental right has recognized just in 2009. And from 2009 to 2017, we have a very narrow process, and in my experience, we can talk about this later, but it's so difficult before. Now it's difficult, but in another way, because we create a legal ground base to develop some kind of legal process, because after these changes in the law, we don't have any guarantees or spaces to try to defend this human right.
Yes, can you please, I have some questions, I got some notes. You mentioned that in 2009, the right to consensuous objection was recognized. It was on the constitutional level in Colombia, and from 2009 till 2017, if I'm right, you said about narrow perspectives about this. Yes, so you do not have any legislation about how conscripts can change mandatory conscription to alternative civil service. I ask it because it's very similar to Russia, and I'm going to address maybe some Russian points on this topic, because we also have a constitution, but we, for example, do not have a procedure how to change military service to alternative civil service in terms of mobilization, in terms of war time. So it's something that you also have, yes? Am I right? Now, but with general conscription.
Yes, it's because we have okay. Colombia is a society divided by political and economical, divided by socioeconomical levels, because we have this kind of socioeconomical division. And we call stratus. It's like the socioeconomical level that you belong. And we have these levels to 1 to 5. And the 5 or 6, it's the little percent of the population, that the richest one, and the one socioeconomical level 1 is the poor part of the population. And the conscription in Colombia, it's always for 200 years, it's always centered in the more poverty people, in the socioeconomical ground level. So the 98% of the young people recruitment in Colombia belongs to the socioeconomical levels 1 and 2, because it's the soldiers always focus this recruitment process in this population. The youngs of the richest people never has the worried about the mandatory service, because they can pay for don't go to the military service. So we have this long tradition and long practice of corruption, because there is no any part of the law that admits that you pay for don't go to the military service. But this practice of corruption has allowed and shared by the military, by the army, for a lot of years. So we have this process, but in 2009, we gained through a constitutional suit that we present, we gained the recognition of the consensus objection as a fundamental right. And in this point, the army, because after this point, when I present my declaration as a consensus objector, the army just say, this is shit. Yeah, this is garbage. You are a pussy. You are a coward, and go to the army. And I have to refuse. And even in some cases, I have to escape to this. We have a exercise that the army call concentration, and it's almost like a I don't know. It's a big raid in some neighborhoods, and when the army put thousands of young people in I don't know, in a football camp or in a big field, and try to fill all the requirements to recruit these people. And I have to escape from these exercises of recruitment, because when I say am I a consensus objector, they say this is bullshit. But in 2009, this thing changed a little bit, because they have a new constitutional reference about this right. But they don't recognize this right. So until 2017, they put this right in the recruitment legal standard of the army. Yeah, they have a law for recruitment. They include the constitutional right of the consensus objections till 2017. So this is the process of recognition of this right.
Yes, I can ask some general questions about conscription, because, sorry, maybe it's a little bit boring, but our subscribers would like, I think, to compare it with Russian system. What is the typical conscription looks like in Colombia? Was it now? I mean, what is the conscription age? How many periods through the year you have for conscription? In what age boys are obliged to enlist themselves in military offices, for example? Can you highlight some, I think, peculiarities of the conscription in Colombia? Maybe Maria, you?
Yes. The conscription in Colombia starts very early. They usually, you're supposed to go into the army at 18 years old. But what happens is that the military use different mechanics and like ways in which they can conscript youngsters. So they go to schools and try to enlist young people from 16 years old or 17 years old, even before they are allowed to go to the army. That's one way. Also, they are usually, you can find them in the public transportation stations, enlisting boys and making them sign forms to go to the military. There used to be this practice that Alejo is going to talk about in a little bit. That is I forgot the name. Las batidas. Sorry, Alejo, if you can help me.
It's arbitrary detentions.
Arbitrary detentions. Thank you. Because in Colombia, the military used to make a lot of illegal detentions with boys they would come with a truck and take boys away into the military district. This was a practice that lasted for a really long time. So the detention here is very, it crosses the lines of legal, into illegal. Yes, Alejo?
And also they have, we have a change, because in Colombia, until in 1993, it was legal to recruit people under age of 16 or 17, if you have some kind of permission of your parents. Because if your mom or your dad signs a letter and say, yes, I allow to the army to recruit my child from 16 years old, you can present to the army. And this changed in 1993, because we have also irregular armies or illegal armies, like the guerrilla. We have 3 guerrillas, and we have also criminal groups or paramilitary army. So we have different kinds of armies in Colombia. And the other army recruit a lot of child and teenagers. And for that reason, the army has to change that law that allows to recruit people from 16 or young, so from 16 years old. So in 1993, this law changed and only recruit from 18. But as Maria Paula says, the process starts from the vinculation or some kind of sign this document that the people has the commitment of go to the military service from before. And also in some regions in Colombia, because we have a high level of poverty in different regions of this country, the army is the only economical option. So people don't want to go to the war, but they don't have any other option of university or so some kind of option to education with some kind of grant from the state. They don't have this option. They don't have another laboral or work option. So they go to the military service or go to the police, because it's the army is seen in Colombia as an enterprise, it's like you have the option to earn some money in this huge part of the state, because in Colombia, for example, in 2012,
it's also. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Alejo. It's also like an ideal thing, like an aspirational thing. If you, for example, it's just that in Colombia, in many regions, you don't have the possibility of eating 3 times a day. So going to the army is that possibility, that they grant you the possibility of earning some money and also getting food 3 times a day, of sleeping in a good place. So the military service is a good alternative, and also is an organization that represents a status in Colombia. And it's like you're coming to be a hero. You're coming to be to serve the state and to be something for like to have this ideal representation of status. You were going to say something that in 2002, Alejo, sorry.
No, in 2012, from each 100 contracts to work with the state, 81 it's in relation with the defense sector, because the army in Colombia, it's like a huge industry. We have this practice of militarization of the society. So for that reason, we have this huge military budget. And for that reason, a lot of people go to the military service, because they say, yeah, at least in this option, we have some money.
Yes, I can totally agree, because from 2022, when the war between Russia and Ukraine has started, we got a little bit similar situation when a lot of people from the regions with a high level of poverty, the state offered them contracts with money more than 2,000 euro, for example, 3,000 euro, just for signing the contract, just for joining to the military. And if you can compare it with salaries, for example, 300 euro per month in regions in Russia, and 3,000 euro just for signing the contracts. Because of this, we got a lot of people in the army, a lot of people in the front line on this war with Ukraine. And so I can totally understand the idea of the state. But you mentioned interesting question about schools, about enlistment at schools. So you said that it's 16 years old, they go to schools, they would like to enlist conscripts in the military offices. So it's also like in Russia, because we got enlistment also at schools. But you, in the beginning, Maria, you mentioned also your work at schools. You said that you got an opportunity to work at schools to spread some peace building ideas at schools. Can you mention which difficulties do you have? Because in Russia from 2022, unfortunately, it's not possible. And as a military lawyer, I've got only one opportunity to be at school, to be in front of people, to describe them their rights and obligations about the alternative civil service, but it was only one time in Russia in 2021, I think. Can you please describe what difficulties do you have, and is it possible in Colombia now when the army is, as you mentioned, a big state company at the country? Yes. Mike?
Yeah, sorry. Let's say one of the most, the hardest difficulties that we have in schools is, of course, being able to access to schools. The thing is that it also has to be in the way we present, because we do have some support for example, from teachers and from members of schools that share our political views or our perspective on these subjects. And that way we have been able to access schools. Let's say, the thing is that the persecution from the military in terms of this is not as high, and we are able to access the schools because of this reason. Also because we usually tend to address subjects that are around peace construction or around prevention of gender-based violence. So we don't portray it specifically as anti-militarism or as like in a way that the military would be more, I don't know, like onto us, so to speak. So that's one of the things, that one of the difficulties is accessing schools and being able to go into these institutions. But also one of the difficulties we have is that when we are talking with young people, when we are addressing like justice and human rights, usually youngsters, the young people that we talk to are in this social level, specifically these social levels that are in the bottom of the social scale in Colombia. And that has a lot of implications, because usually gender-based violence is a lot more present in these social levels, and is more invisibilized, like it's more invisible, it's more normalized. And also violence in general. The thing is that Colombian society is a society that has had internal conflict for more than 60 years, that has had conflict in like many regions for more than 60 years. So it's a thing, talking about violence it's hard. And when you try to address these subjects with youngsters, what happens is that they don't like talking about these subjects. They also, we see a lot of dynamics that come in terms of violence that are very much normalized. So what we have come to do to address these subjects is doing it in a way that youngsters are interested in these subjects. And that's where gamification comes to place. That's where we decided to do games and to do it in a way that youngsters are more interested and that they can get closer to these subjects. I don't know if you were going to say something, Alejo, about this.
Yes, and another difficulty is about the criminalization of our work, because as we have this inter-conflict between the guerrillas and the army, in some regions, when we talk about you have this fundamental right of you have the option to decide between the war or another kind of project life, when we say things like that, some people say no, you are not working for peace. You are a pro-guerrilla member. You are a pro-guerrilla organization. So this kind of threatening accusation has created some problems of security for us, because in Colombia, when you are when you have this label of pro-guerrilla member, you have security issues, because we have this paramilitary army to threat and kill people with this label. And also the army has these practices about illegal infiltration or espionage, that when they reviews your communication and all the things. And in social media, for example, we publish the work that we do with the young people, and some influencers for the far right try to put this label on us and say, no, this is people to defend the idea of the guerrilla, to talk about peace and all this shit, but this is not about any constitutional right. And that is a huge problem, because we have the mandatory option to protect the people that we when we work, yeah, because we work with child and young people and teenagers, and they don't have a very I don't know, more structured idea about the conflict, about the ideologies, about the positions and the armies. But the people put in the conflict, the people with this kind of comments, they put in risk these young people in the regions, because we have this armed conflict, and it's a very difficult thing when this kind of accusations appears in social media.
Can I ask you, you mentioned pro-guerrillas movement. Can I compare it with private military groups or not? It's like, if I'm not mistaken, is it like private military groups or not?
No, we have the conflict is mainly between two kind of groups. Since, I don't know, maybe almost 70 years, in Colombia appears one of the biggest guerrillas in the whole world, because a lot of people joined to the guerrilla because the inequality and the violence in the lands with the landowners and all this thing. So the first guerrilla was the FARC. That's like the it's one of the biggest guerrilla, but we have at least 4 or 5 different guerrillas with different ideologies, more anarchist ideology or a Marxist ideology or a liberation theology ideology. So they have different kind of guerrillas. We have this kind of different guerrillas, but through all this time, just 2 guerrillas survive of this process of war against the government. One of the guerrillas start a negotiation process, a peace agreements with the government. And this is the FARC. The another one, the ELN, that means like Army of National Liberation. This army, this guerrilla start a negotiation, but quit the negotiation and restart the negotiation, and it's kind of a difficult process. But this is the mainly conflict between the state and these guerrillas. But
also
in the 80s, the early 80s, the government start a strategy to use paramilitary armies and create these paramilitary groups that they have allowed to do all the things that the military can do because all the denounces or the international perspective of human rights. So the paramilitary armies start to grow from the early 80s, and they have a very strong relation with the narco lords in Colombia, because we are the main producer of cocaine in the whole world. So for that reason, this cocaine business creates a lot of money, and this money grants the creation of these kinds of different armies. So the paramilitary armies divides in different little armies in each region, like in the narco process in Mexico. And for that reason, we have a lot of armies, because we have almost a different kind of army for different kind of each region in Colombia.
Also because the fight for the territory is very big, because with territory comes money and drugs and all the things that you can do for this. And since the military have specific regulations, the paramilitary don't. And they're sort of like mercenaries. They work for anyone who is willing to benefit them and pay them.
Okay. So can we now move to the procedure of alternative civil service? Because you mentioned this gamification, and it's very interesting because we did something recently, so we got it online. It's like a real game about the procedure, how to cooperate, how to communicate with the military office in Russia. Of course, it's important to make something in Russia now. I mean, you mentioned also board games. Yes, I noted like board games. Yes, unfortunately, we do not have an opportunity to make it in Russia, but it's very interesting. Can we start? I think I would like to discuss it a little bit now about this gamification. If I understood it correctly, so the idea is to show to the conscripts the procedure, how is it possible to communicate, how is it possible to defend their rights when they communicate with military office, what does it look like and what is it about, and maybe also we can discuss a little the procedure, how is it possible now to legally evade the military in Colombia and to choose the alternative civil service. Yes, please, Alejandro, maybe you?
Yeah, it's when you start to use games to talk about these subjects, it's because in the beginning we use as a protection strategy, because in those regions with the armed conflict, it's very alive, with a lot of people has a prevention of talk about peace, about non-violence, about anti-militarism. If we go to these regions to say we are here to talk about consensus objectors and how to refuse to do part of the war and all this shit, it's like a lot of people say, no, this is so fucking dangerous. We don't want to be part of this. We don't go to our child, go to this workshop. Sorry, but no. And for that reason, we say, no, we have a workshop about games. And we have these games about cooperative games or non-violence games, and people just react in another way, like, that sounds interesting. And that's the one of the goals with this methodology, because it allows to reduce the prevention of the subject, because people just say, I'm here for playing, not for talk about the war and about the violence and all these things. But in the game process, we do a lot of role play game, but not role play game like a classic role play game with dice and all the things. It's more like simulate situations when the people have to take some kind of decision. Like, okay, you are in this situation, and what is your decision? You participate or you don't participate, and you have to argument why you take whatever of your decision, because we don't judge people for the decision that they take. And this is a key thing in our workshops, in our pedagogical process, because when you don't judge the people, just hear the people, yeah, just listen when they argument and when they choose, the people start to debate inside of the game. And you don't have to say anything. You just let the
Let it
debate
happen.
Yeah, let it happen. And the people start to show different points of view and talk about so spontaneously about the war. Yes, you think that participate, it's fine, but in my experience or the experience of my family, this has a lot of problems, because I have people to die for nothing in the lands, and the people start to talk about it inside of the game. So for that reason, we are very, I don't know, we are so surprised, so amazed in the first years, and we say and we decide we have to make better and more refine these kind of methodologies. And for that reason, we start with this group or I don't know, movement methodologies, and create some more specific and detailed methodology about game. But Maria Paula can say it better.
Yes. In terms of the process of like making this right a reality, the thing is that when we accompany youngsters, we do make one role-playing game with them, but that is individually. Like in the process of accompanying them, that role-playing game is just for the declaration that they have to give in the military district. But when we go to schools, we have to think about the collective mind, right? We have to think about how do we address these subjects in ways that are collective. And that's where we found that the conversation, their own opinions are the most important, because there's all kinds of opinions in one school class. You know, you have the people who are against the war, but we also have the people who are in pro-militarism. So you get to listen to their experience, to know, to see, to say, for example, in my house, my dad is from the military, and he thinks that we should be strong men, and we can't cry, for example, or that kinds of things. And you also have like the opinions of others. And when we get together these opinions and make them dialogue, that's where the learning process is the most real. And you actually get to talk. And just by talking, this like actual dialogue is what makes you understand and see and come to your own opinions into what you can do in terms of the war and the conflict. Also because in Colombia, talking about these subjects is very touchy. It's because it's a very fragile society in terms of violence. So only a comment can get you killed, because the conflict is so latent and so real. And especially in regions where you can't talk about some things because you might have the risk of getting killed. So talking it in these spaces that are gamified, that you can open up yourself to experimentation and to try and see which limits do you have in terms of risk, or which limits do you have in terms of I don't know, depending on the subject that you're talking about, but like to test yourself and to open the dialogue on these subjects is how we do it, and how we find the best ways in addressing it. I don't know if we have time to like deepen a little bit in maybe some of the games that we have. But
Yes, I would like to ask about the examples also. I would like to about the examples. I am really interested in board games because talking about us, we did. So it was like 2 weeks ago. We with our colleagues we presented a game. It's on the internet. How you can I said communicate with military office. How you can apply for alternative civil service. How you need to present your argumentation and etc etc. So yes, but it's only online and it's not very modern if we're going to compare it with computer games. It's like the project of non-governmental organizations, but it's very important, and I agree with you about the importance of gamification because we can see from statistics, for example, there are a lot of people who who played this game online, although it's not like very complicated. And if you have some examples of board games, it would be very interesting to look at. Yes. Or maybe yes.
Yes,
we need to wait.
I shut off my camera because I'm looking for the game so I can show you. But yes, Alejo, you can continue and I'll get back to you right away.
Yes, we have two kind of different games. We have this kind of game that we do with the group and involves the movement of the body. Like you have to start off this position, but you can advance in another position if you think that this kind of affirmation is in corresponding of your life experience. So we start with this kind of games, but when we think that we have to redefine or make more specific the some games, we start to create different kind of games, and we developed for 5 or 6 years this game called Macho that it's about the masculinity process of take decisions, risky decisions in depends of different contexts. So some of these decisions are I don't know, are like when people say that for being a man, I have to prepare to take a weapon, a gun. What are my thoughts about that? We create a situation when you have to take a gun, and you have the option to refuse that, or you have the option to say, I take the gun, but just for this time. And when you have this second option, you can, as Maria Paula is showing in this point, we have this game creates in a video game aesthetic. Yeah, for that reason we have these indicators of mental health and physical health, and recognize or fame and penalizations. So in the example of this little situation, we have the people to choice between I take the gun or I don't take the gun. And if they decide, if the people decide to take the gun, they have to roll a dice, because take the gun open the opportunity to some risky things can happen. But these risky things, it's a lucky thing. Yeah, and for that reason, when the people take the risky decision, they have to roll a dice. And the roll of the dice, in a high percentage of the cases implies some negative consequences, like you lose 2 points of physical health for this reason, or 1 point of mental health for another reason, and the people just look how the game represents the consequences of each choice. But in the game, we create the possibility to take some security, or I don't know how to say, more caring decisions. Yeah, we have this caring process when the people can take the choice to don't be risky. But in the game, there is a macho card to can force the decision of another person. Maria Paula,
Yes. Yes. We have roles in the game. So you get to be the macho, or you get to be the caretaker, the caretaker, sorry. And when you are the caretaker, you can use these other cards that are the caring cards. I don't know if you can see it well here, but there's a little card here that says autonomy. When you are when you're facing the dares, this card is the dare. The dare tells you that, for example, you will take the gun, or will you not take it. If you take the gun, you have two options: rolling the dice, and you can do well, for example here, or you can do badly. If you do well, you gain some points, but if you do badly, you will lose mental health or physical health, like life in this example, or you will lose something else. But if you're a caretaker, you can use the autonomy card or the caring cards. These caring cards are cards that let you mitigate the effects of the dice, yes, of when you roll the dice. So you use this card to gain, for example, life, or to gain mental health, or to help other person gain life or gain mental health. So you're helping other person survive inside the game. Yes. And this way you relate the caring with helping others, or relate the caring with helping yourself inside the game. Yes. And when you don't throw the dice, you can also use the alternative. The alternative is this last part where you can gain these caring cards. In the game, the idea is also to understand how risk is related to traditional masculinity's expectations, and to understand how this is related to violence. Because the construction of masculinity has been always related to violence and to violent action. And if you question yourself about the way you're doing violence, and you question yourself about the way you're engaging into violence by taking risks, or by not caring for others, or by trying to be the macho and always taking decisions for others, that way you can understand how that leads to, for example, violent actions like taking the gun and maybe killing others, or being violent to others. So these are the kinds of conversations that we have with these games. Also, in the back of the board, we have questions. It's just that I have the picture here of the questions. We have questions, and these questions are usually related to the decision-making process and the way you're constructing your own masculinity. So that way you get to question yourself in terms of what decisions are you taking. Here, this question says, why many men take risky decisions? Why do a lot of men take risky decisions? And that means that if your construction of masculinity is related to these expectations, you tend to take risky decisions. And those risky decisions lead you to making your life at risk, or taking violent actions, for example, right? So,
Yes, sorry, it reminds me about the preparation for interrogation in military office. So I got this webinar with colleagues in Greece, and they got very interesting situation. I mean, in procedure of changing the military service to alternative civil service, they got an interrogation in military office, and they got a lot of tricky questions from the commission. Tricky questions, for example, like if tomorrow will be a war, how will be defend your nation, how will be defend your family, your house, if it will be attacked by the enemy. And they got a task to a direct task to persuade a man to answer like, I will defend my nation with a gun. And then they answer, oh, okay, you are not a pacifist. You do not have any grounds to go through alternative civil service. And it reminds me, it's like a very interesting and good preparation also for these, not like interrogations, but Alejandro, he said about the declaration, something, yes, if I understood it
Yes.
correctly. This declaration means your thoughts about the idea of anti-militarism, about the idea to go through consensus objection. It's very interesting, and it's nice that you have an opportunity to do it personally. I mean, personally in communities, because unfortunately we do not have. So it looks like criminal offense now, unfortunately, but it's very nice. And can I ask you now about this declaration? Maybe you, Alejandro, can you mention so what it's look like? What you need to put in this declaration? What questions can you face? And maybe you can also tell us about your personal experience, because I would like to mention that Alejandro got a personal experience as consensus objector, and he got it in Colombia. So it would be very interesting to hear your story. So
Yes.
please.
But I like to start saying that exactly is the same process with these interrogations that you described. Is the same process here with the army. It's exactly the same process, because when you now, no, not before, but when you now declare yourself as a consensus objector, you have to go into this interrogation process that Maria Paula describes, when you face 5 guys of the army with different positions and different professions, and they start to make questions about your declaration. And these kind of questions appears so often. It's like, so in this situation, you take a gun to defend your family or you don't. And we say, what kind of relation have this question with my position as a consensus objector when I just refuse to do part of this war? Yeah, what kind of I refuse do you understand? Yeah, so in my experience, I declare, I make my declaration almost 20 years ago, because I have now 42 years, and I have to resolve this problem when I have 18. So it was different at that time, and it's a rough experience, because I have to confront different kinds of military recruitment options, or different kinds of people in different situations. Yeah, I have to fly of a truck, one of these trucks that Maria Paula describes, because they took me in the street, and we go to the battalion, but in some point of the way, the truck goes very slow, and the 2 people in this truck say, we don't really want to go. we have to do anything, but we don't go to the battalion. So we look for an opportunity, and in some point, the army, the soldier in the I don't know, the door of the truck, they just are not so concentrated in the people behind the truck, and we just escape running of the truck. So it's different at that time. But now, when you do when you write your declaration just have to complete 3 criteria established by the Constitutional Code. And these criteria are, the first one, it's the things that you put in your declarations have to be real. Yeah, it's the truth. If you say that you are a consensus objector because you belong of this religious community, and all the people in this religious community refuse to take a gun or do violence against another people, you have to support that you are part of this community, this religion group or something like that. So the first thing is, the things that you put in your declaration, you have to, you don't have to support each affirmation in your declaration, but it's the Constitutional Court said it has to be true. The second one, it's you don't have to change opinion. Yeah, you have to make the same opinion during the time. And this is a tricky one because, for example, we have a lot of people to do part in some youngsters gangs in some regions. Yeah, I take a little role in some gang, but I understand about this experience that the violence is not a solution. So for that reason, in my life, I choose non-violence, and I do my declaration in this way. And it's a tricky one, but in the majority of the cases, this is a easy check for the declaration. But it's a third one, and that is a problematical one. And this is you have to say the truth. You have to stay in the same opinion. And the third one is I forgot.
You have to present your philosophical and ethical reasons. For example, for why do you want to be a conscientious objector? So, for example, if you belong to a religion, you have to state the reasons why religiously you are against war or violence. If you are I don't know, for philosophical reasons or for ethical reasons, you say, I don't know, I lived in a household that there was a lot of violence, and now I've come out of that, and I don't, for example, my dad used to hit my mom or something like that. Like I came out of this and I don't want to engage with violence again. This is why I, for example, say, so they have to be like they have to come from your own ethical and political perspective. Like you have to declare them in terms of why is this related to your own construction of self, for example. Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So that reason, but this is a tricky one because a lot of reasons. How can you confront your own conscience? In between of the experience of your life experience and the context, and this is a huge opportunity in this interrogation process when the people start to do questions about that, like, okay, but this is your personal belief. This is not a national thing. It's like if you hate your country or something like that. It's so complicated, that point, because you cannot make measures about your conscience process. You cannot say, oh, I'm aware now because I'm not aware before, or I'm more aware of my conscience now. It's so difficult try to prove your conscience. For that reason, there is an international recommendations about this process of declaration, because you don't have to prove your conscience reasons. Yeah, the proof it's from the army. The army have to prove that you are not saying the truth. But you don't have to prove your
Yes.
reasons of conscience.
And here I would like to mention this topic that we have also in Russia, because in Russia, before the war, it was also positions of Constitutional Court that stated that you are not obliged to prove your thoughts. You need also only to present your thoughts, and that's enough. So if you present it, if you didn't change your opinions, for example, I got an interesting case in practice when I got a concessions objector, and while the process realized that he got a lot of trophies because he's a professional in shooting. He got a master because he got a master in shooting. I mean, a professional with the rifles and with the guns. So, and it was revealed about the process of changing the military service to alternative civil service. And unfortunately, the commission, they got all grounds to say that you are lying. So you are not a concessions objector. You lied in your declaration. But yes, the Russian Constitutional Court got a lot of brilliant positions about that you need only to show your thoughts. And because of this, I was quite surprised. It was a surprise for me when I realized that in Greece, they do not support this position. And in Greece, you need to persuade the commission, you need to prove your conscience. And it's an absurd. It's very comical. Yes, because it's important. So it's important to prove your conscience. And I'm glad to hear that you got these positions. And unfortunately, now we have this in Russia in commissions. A lot of military officers, they started to interrogate conscripts, and they ask him questions about how can you prove your thoughts? How can you prove what proofs do you have? What documents do you have? And it's very always impossible to prove. And they got a denial on the process of changing the military service with alternative civil service. Yes, and what is the tendency in Colombia now in this way? So the military officers, do they recognize this idea? Or not, or maybe there are now bad tendency. Maybe Maria, can you answer this?
Yes. They tend to make a lot of resistance to recognizing the idea. Actually, we have very interesting cases of conscientious objectors exercise of resistance themselves, because usually when you have to present this declaration to the military board, you have to stay in the military district for about 5 or 4 days before your declaration board. So when you stay in the military district, they try to force you into practicing and doing the military practices, right? So they try to make you form, and they try to make you sleep and wake at the same time they do, and all these things that you have to start doing when you go into the military, right? So what we tell the youngsters is that they have to do a resistance process. Yes, if they're not willing to go into these practices, you have to make a resistance. So they have to, for example, when they start to form, not form with them, or when they try to make you, I don't know, they give you a direction, or they give you an order, you have to resist. Yes, and that resistance process is also what proves sort of that you don't belong in that military district. So we had one of our conscientious objectors. He was in the military district, and they forced a gun into him, like he had to hold it. And what he did was he acted like he wasn't listening, and he wouldn't hold the gun, and he would act as a fool. Like he would not tend to the other, and he would just refuse and stay like this. And
it's very similar to Russia now, when we got this also arbitrary detentions with trucks in Moscow right now, and the brilliant strategy was to act like fool. The brilliant strategy on the unification point was like, ignoring all orders, not wearing uniform, not signing all documents and ignoring it, or ask them to give a free, because in Russia you have a constitutional right to challenge all state decisions in courts, even if it's military offices. And we got maybe 12, 15 cases now, positive cases, when it was possible to help people on a unification point. It's like you say, there's like act like a fool. Yeah.
Yes, so that's one of the ways of resistance that make us make this process well actually be successful. Yeah, Alejo, you were gonna say something about this.
I would like to ask Alejo to continue about the experience. So we realized these 3 criteria that you need to put in declaration. And Alejo, can you please describe your personal experience as a consensus objector while you had the alternative civil service, if I can name it correctly? So how it was, what is like in Colombia, especially more than 20 years ago. So what did you do? And yeah, what was your resistance in this topic?
Yeah, these 3 criteria exist from 2009. So at my time, almost 20 years ago, we don't have these 3 criteria that you have to spoke through, you have to fix your position, and you have to go deep in your arguments. This is the 3rd criteria. Your conscience arguments has to be deep. And that's the tricky thing with the deep, because how deep is your conscience? How can you measure the deepest of your arguments? It's absurd. But in my experience, when I wrote my declaration, I have victims in my family from the both sides, because I have family in one region when the guerrilla take some victims of the war actions in that region, but also I have family that was victim from the army, for the national army. So I understand very young that the war, it's not important the side that you choose. In the war, everybody loses. Yeah, it's like some kind of reality behind the war. Everybody loses something in the war. So my declaration, it was more of that in that way, like I choose not to do my military service for these reasons, and they tried to recruit me for maybe 4 or 5 years. But when I go to the limit age of the recruitment, because the limit age of recruitment in Colombia is 24 years. If you have 24, you are not able to be recruitment. Just in the case of a intern commotion state or declaration of war, an international war. In this kind of situation, the national law changes, and you are be able to join to the army till 50 years, if I don't recall. No, yes, it's 50 years. But in my experience, I refuse to do the military service. I present my declaration. My declaration it's not evaluated or even read it for the army, because they at that time they don't recognize anything. So they say, no, you are a coward and all the thing. And when I come to the 24 years, they say, okay, you don't have to go now, just pay the military card. Because in Colombia exists a document called military card. And if you don't have this document, at that time, you cannot graduate from the university. You cannot work. It's in some places when you present your curriculum vitae or your experience for being for a contract in this workplace, they ask for your military card. And that's absurd because I am a teacher and I'm studied to be a teacher. And I don't know what the fuck I have to do my military experience with my work as a teacher. Yeah, what is the relation between both? But in
Especially
some,
because they usually give you the military card when you pay for it.
yes. So in some places, when I go to the schools to apply for a work in that school, they say, "Where is your military card?" And I say, but why it's important to be work to have a work in these schools? I'm a teacher, please. So in that experience, I refused to pay my military card, and the army accused me about tax evasion, and they open a legal process against me from evasion of this pay. But there is a very interesting thing. The military card, it's not a tax, works as a tax. Yeah, they think that it's a tax, but it's not a tax because it's a special contribution to the army, and they create this figure of a special contribution to have totally control of their money, because if they recognize that this is some kind of tax, the state have to create some kind of control of this money because it's a tax.
Regulation.
Yeah, they have to regulate this tax, but the army don't want it, so they create the figure of special contribution. And I refuse to do this special contribution. I say I don't have to pay any fucking money to the army. If you have to pay, I can to pay with the healthcare system or the educational system, wherever another part of the state. But I don't go to pay a penny for the army, and for that reason they open this process. But it's a very interesting thing because they know, they are very aware about the narrow perspective of this special contribution, so they don't go to the jury, they don't present to the audience when they accuse me about tax evasion. So the judge just desestimate the case and say, yeah, we don't have the counterpart in this case, so we understand that the army are not interested in go in this legal process to the end. So for that reason, I don't go to jail, but they try to put me in jail for refuse to pay this military card. In 2014, we changed the law because we demand to graduate without have to pay or show your military card. So we win this suit in 2014, and the consensus objector movement in Colombia changed the law. So from 2014, any guy has to present the military card to graduate from any university. We changed the law in that way. And now we are trying to change the law to try to have to present your military card for working, because a lot of people don't want to go to the military service, but they go for this document, because without this document, you have some problems to be accepted in some workplaces. So that's a little description about how this process has changed the law, changed the practices about militarizations, and we are in this fight in this moment, try to look for another alternatives to I don't know, could this kind of civil restrictions of your exercise as a citizen just for refuse to do part of the military service?
You know, the interesting point I got when you spoke about the military card is that in Russia we also got a military document, and it's very specific document officially, you can study and you can apply for work without this document. But very often we receive messages that employers, they are afraid of something from the state, of liability from the state. Officially, we do not have any liability for having an employee without a military document, but employers are afraid of, and they order their potential employees to go to the military office and to receive these documents. And luckily, in Russia, you don't need to pay for the document, but we have like 3 types of this document. And if you didn't do your military service, they can give you a document, a specific document, and you will be banned from working in state institutions and municipal institutions. So it's like kind of discrimination of people that, for example, how the state labeled it, they illegally evaded the military service without any criminal liability, but illegally evaded. For example, they didn't receive any summonses, they didn't receive any notifications to the military office, and they spent 5, 6, 7 years. They reached 30 years old, and they realized that now they're banned because it was a decision of military office. And more I got these webinars, more and understand that very different states they got a very similar methods, similar methodology to discriminate people, to spread the militarism ideas. So if we will compare Colombia and Russia, we are very far from each other. But I hear these methods. I hear different your points, even about the trucks that we unfortunately that we have now. I can say that 20 years ago it was better. 20 years ago, it was a possibility to make a contract army in Russia without any conscription, but we lost here, and now we live with militarization. Yes, and I think to have an end of our discussion, I would like to ask my typical question about militarization. So usually I ask my colleagues from like Finland, Greece, like Cyprus, Turkey about militarization, and they can feel it because of the war in European region, because also in the war between Israel and Palestine. So we got these conflicts, a lot of conflicts, military conflicts in Europe, and it affects countries in this region. And what can you say about militarization in Colombia? Is it now a positive tendency that you said that you got some success in changing the law? And I can assure you that it's a really great success, because now in Russia it's impossible, for example. Or is it a bad tendency with militarization, and it's becoming worse and worse and worse, even in the scope of Colombia, even in the scope of how you see it? Maybe Maria first. Yes.
Yes, it's a complex thing. It's a complex process, because even though we have gained some, we have advanced in this process of making conscientious objection a right, and making sure that this right is actually a reality. There's still a lot of different variables that have to do with militarization, specifically because since we are talking about a country that has been in conflict for more than 60 years, its violence is present, is permanent in our day-to-day lives. And also, we are a very much militarized country. Like, for example, in schools, we still form like in military districts, we form every day, like to start the day. So like these practices are ingrained in our collective minds and in our collective consciousness. So when we are talking about violence and militarization in general, it's a thing that is in our daily lives. So I think it's hard still to work through this, because we have to denormalize these practices a lot. And that's a little bit of what we try to do, but also because of the presence of violence in like every other region in Colombia. Like, for example, the people who live in the city have more privilege in terms that they can question themselves about this, because they don't have conflict present all the time in their city, even though we do have the military and we do have other practices, but not like latent conflict. And in regions in Colombia, they do have conflict all the time present in their daily lives, as what I was talking about a little bit earlier, that they can get killed for saying something, or that there are confrontations of different groups, military groups, and guerrillas in their regions, and they have to move away from the regions, or they have to always be prepared for confrontation and for this kind of thing. So I feel like it's a hard thing to address, and that there's also a lot of things still to do in terms of thinking about violence and addressing violence in general and war.
And about the militarization, we have now an opportunity, because we have this conflict for more than 60 years, but people are tired of the violence, are tired of the forced displacement of the people, the kidnapping, the massacres. They are tired. And when the peace process begin, a lot of people receive this peace process as a hope, a very special hope to try to put an end of this conflict. But now we are in the more vulnerable, or I don't know how to say, the more exposed part of this peace process, because all the peace process, like in the South African experience, or in the conflict in Ireland experience, all the peace process passed for a very like problematic stage. And we are in this phase now, because we have this for a lot of time. We don't have a governments for a left government, but we have this kind of government now. And the president now, it was part of a guerrilla some maybe 20 years
20 years
before
ago.
Yeah. So for that reason, he are some kind of or representative figure of the peace process, and he is very interested to accomplish and finalize this process. But we have for the in the other side, the people to get money for the war. And this is a lot of people, not just the army, not just the police. We have also the paramilitary groups, we have the illegal groups to get money for the war. And these people have making in this point a lot of pressure to try to rip out the peace process, and to try to come back to the war times. So it's so difficult, because now we have this conflict, social and cultural conflict, when we have to defend the peace perspective and the nonviolent perspective. But a lot of people say, yeah, but you know, the only way to finish this is through the war, to the good people winning against the bad people and all the things. But it's so difficult, because now we have to defend or try to make a social advocacy, social I don't know, social respaldo, yo no sé cómo se, yeah, it's like a try to be open to another kind of alternatives to the war. And also, we are very concerned about the war in another countries, because this international war respond or make strong the position for the people to argument in favor of the war in Colombia. So they say, if you look the international community, it's a war that we need. Yeah, we need to be stronger in our politics. We have to continue the militarization process and all the things. And I don't know, it's like people don't understand well the consequences, the huge consequences of a war. We participate with Maria Paula in a meeting in London 2 weeks ago. And people in London are so worried about the conflict with Russia, or the conflict between OTAN and Russia, and say, yes, we don't have the measure of the escalation of this war. And if we escalate the militarization, the war process, we don't really has the conscience of how deep and how big can be the consequences. So this is our thoughts about the militarization process.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope it will be better in 2025, and the conflict in Europe will not be affect in other countries. Yes, but unfortunately, we a little bit ran out of time. I would like to say thank you for joining this webinar. It was very interesting in terms of how you help conscientious objectors in Colombia, and I'll be back to you because we would like to, I think it would be great to make some publications in our networks about the gamification process. It was very interesting, and with all pictures that it would be possible to share with our audience. So, okay, thank you very much, Marie. Thank you very much, Alejandro, for
Thank you.
today.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and I think we can end now. I will ask my colleagues.
Mhm.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And please do not disconnect now.